Okay. Tape doing Kuf Chavkim Halacha base. Short halacha. Asur lasis merchetz mistam yainam. You're now allowed to make a bath from stam yain for whatever, some kind of health benefit. Choleh she'en b'sakana, that this Choleh she'en b'sakana would want to use it, and you're not allowed to use it. The Machaber says that because the Machaber already told us in Halacha Aleph that he holds that stam yain is also bana. So it's also bana, so then the Choleh can't do it. It's a little more complicated. I'll explain in a second. And then in parentheses it says, "Ayin kaman tzarich siman kufnin hey." Siman kufnin hey is about Cholim having doing different things that are connected to Issurim. So like this, there is a din. There is a din that a Choleh she'en b'sakana is allowed to eat bishalakim. It's brought in Hilchos Shabbos. We spoke about it when we learned bishalakim. He's allowed to be over the Issur D'Rabbanan of bishalakim. And there's a Teshuvos HaRema about whether this shaila, about whether he could use a merchatz from stam yainam. Should you see from that Issur, from the fact that the Choleh could eat bishalakim, that he could also do other Issurim D'Rabbanan. So the Rashba in this case is machmir. And there's aside from the shaila whether a Choleh could do Issur D'Rabbanan, in our case there are two extra complications. One is the possibility that we should say sicha kishtia. We spoke about that some time ago. Maybe since he's bathing in the stam yainam, maybe it could be as if he's drinking it, so it's worse than just having hanaf from stam yainam. Maybe it's as if he's eating the stam yainam. And there's another angle, which is maybe since stam yainam has some connection. What? Since stam yainam has some connection to Avodah Zarah, maybe you're not allowed to do it because it's an Issur of Avodah Zarah. Okay, there are 2 days about that in Kufnin Hay. The Mechaber brings 2 days about that in Kufnin Hay, whether a Choleh is allowed to do things that have to do with Avodah Zarah, whether there's a special connection for Avodah Zarah. Over there he's makel about that shaila. But over here the Mechaber tells us to be machmir, like this Rash, but the Choleh should not use the merchatz from stam yainam. But those dinim are specific to our case. In Kufnin Hay, the Mechaber says like this. You know that there are 3 types of Cholim. Okay, we group Cholim into 3 groups. We have a Choleh sheyesh b'sakana, and a Choleh she'en b'sakana. A Choleh she'en b'sakana means that there's no sakana, but he's like incapacitated. He's not functional because of his Choleh. And then there's a Mechush, which is there's some kind of problem and there's a discomfort, but it's not no sakana at all. And it's not even ein b'sakana, he's uncomfortable, something's bothering him. Okay, so those cholim have different dinim for those harms. So the first, what does it mean? Well, a choleh sheyesh b'sakana is either means the person literally is in danger, or if his disease will get worse, it'll come to a sakana also. It doesn't have to be in sakana now. It would progress without treating him, it'll get to a sakana. So I'm not going to put fever on the side for a second, but most infections, if you don't treat them, can lead to sakana also. So he doesn't have to be actually laying in the hospital, dying, but he could also be even with many infections. If you take to that, what would happen if we didn't do anything about this infection? Now, if it happened, then the end result is a sakana. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer to that question. Whether that's considered yesh b'sakana, I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe it is considered yesh b'sakana. I don't know.
In Hilchos Shabbos, any chayda that even though we have medicine available ready to treat it, it's still considered to be a choleh sheyesh b'sakana.
Okay, Choleh she'en b'sakana is a person who's not functional. A person has a serious migraine headache. Okay, it's not sakana. Nothing's going to happen. There's no potential of danger that he could die from that thing. But he's not functional. He can't get up and get out of bed and do anything he wants to do. He can't do his usual things. But a case that's more lemaisa for most people in sakana is that kids are considered to be a kid who's sick is automatically an sakana. The Rebbe Shachar explains it is because when an adult, if I have a pain in my tooth, so I say, listen, I have a pain in my tooth, and I have to do what I have to do. I have to function, even though I have a pain in my tooth. But again, when he has a pain in his tooth, he's totally oismensch. He just doesn't do. He can't do his usual functioning. You know what I mean? So that's why the kid is automatically. And the mechosh is I have a runny nose. Okay, so it's uncomfortable. It's obviously not sakana, and I can function the way I'm supposed. Okay, so for a choleh sheyesh b'sakana, he's allowed to be over on any issur d'oraisa and issur d'rabbanan. For sure, if it's to help his choleh, and this shaylas in Hilchos Shabbos, maybe even not to help his choleh, okay? But for sure, to help his choleh, he can do over an issur d'oraisa or issur d'rabbanan. For a Choleh she'ein b'sakana, when it says in Kufnun Hey, the Mechaber agrees to this, even though Yossi said a little differently, is that the Choleh she'ein b'sakana can do an Isser D'Rabbanan, but he can only do an Isser D'Rabbanan that does not have an Isser Achila connected to it. Okay? And someone who has a Mechash could do nothing. Okay? He can't do anything. Okay? So in our halacha, I don't know if it's the Rama or someone stuck in says, I come on side to Sim Kufnun Hey, because over there, Kufnun Hey, the Rama says like this. Kufnun Hey, the Rama says, he says, remember, I told you that I hold that Stam Yenim is not Asur B'Hana. Okay? So really, if Stam Yenim is not Asur B'Hana, so really, the Choleh could bathe you would think, the Choleh could bathe in the Stam Yenim also. Because forget about that he's the Choleh. I hold that everybody's allowed to do it, because there's no Isser Hana, which we spoke about. Maybe there is or not. There's no Isser Hana. But he says, since some people hold Sicha Kishtiya, so therefore only the Choleh she'ein b'sakana should be makel about bathing in the Stam Yain. Okay? The Rama in Kufnun Hey. Even though the Rama says, I think that Stam Yainim is not Asur B'Hana, so you would think that anybody could bathe in if they wanted to. He says, no, but since I'm adding in words, but since the possibility that Sicha Kishtiya, so they should avoid. Okay? That right, since Sicha Kishtiya, it's a little bit like eating, so therefore only the Choleh she'ein b'sakana should do that. But a regular person... Right, but it's not really. It's an in-between. It's not. We don't really think that it's like an in-between, so we'll be machmir that only the Ein B'Sakana should do it, but not a regular guy off the street. Okay. So now, all of this is very straightforward. Okay? All of this is pretty accepted and pretty straightforward. Okay? Until we turn to the Teshuvos HaRema. Okay? The Rama wrote Teshuvos also. Okay? And there's a Teshuvah. Those are all old editions. You'll hear one in a second. Teshuvos HaRema. And Rama has in Sim Kuf Chabal, he has a tshuva that starts with the following heading on top of the tshuva. Okay, it says, Ezra Yimim Hashem Yishmai V'Aretz, V'hu Yatzvim Mikol Shkiya. Okay, so Yatzvim Mishkiya. Okay, so you get the feeling that something unusual is about to happen over here. Okay, that's what the tshuva starts with.
He doesn't start every tshuva?
No, he does not. So it's even before the shayla. It's just like a heading, like on top there. Okay, so this tshuva is about the following shayla. Okay, did we Yidden in Italy? Who were otherwise completely Shermer Torah mitzvahs, they did everything they were supposed to do, except for one thing. Okay? They all ate Stam Yenim. Okay? The whole neighborhood like that. That was, that's like Fitman. That's what we did. They all ate Stam Yenim. Okay? And nobody had any idea why they did it.
It's a famous one that could be a forgery?
They were talking about that. Sim Kuf Chaftar.
No, but it could be that you didn't
I'm going to tell you that in a second. Just give me a second. So these people ate Stam Yenim, and the shayla wasn't whether they should eat Stam Yenim. Nobody was trying to do what they were trying to do. The shayla was, what happens if they told me that wine was not Stam Yenim? They said, this wine, you people in Poland, you could eat this wine. Should we trust them or should we not trust them? It could be we did. Okay, so the shayla is, should we trust them or should we not trust them? Okay, so the Rama says, I'm gonna tell you a reason why what they're doing has some justification. He says, no, I don't think you should do this. This is not meant to say why it's mutter. But it's enough to say why they should think that it's mutter, so that when they tell it to us, they're not considered a chashud on this isser, that we shouldn't trust them. If a person's a chashud, you don't believe them. But if the person's not a chashud, he thinks he's doing the right thing. We could dream up some explanation for what he's doing that, so then we should, he's not a chashud. If he's not a chashud, we could believe him. In one part of the truth says you have to swear, but we should believe him that the wine is not Stam Yenim. So that part of the tshuva was already controversial. That part of the tshuva. But then at the end of the tshuva, towards the end of the tshuva, the Rama says, and you know what? And now that I came up with this whole explanation for why it might be mutter to eat Stam Yenim, to explain why these people should have a habit and they should do it, so Choleh she'ein b'sakana can also eat Stam Yenim. It's good enough for Choleh she'ein b'sakana. For the Jews in Italy, it's good enough that we should trust them, that they should not be considered chashudim, and for Choleh she'ein b'sakana, we should gladly eat it also. Okay? So everyone looks at it and says, what are you talking about? It's in Sim Kufnan Hey, the Rama says, Beverages, that the Choleh she'ein b'sakana cannot eat Stam Yenim. So the Chayadam says like this. He says, you should know that this Teshuvos HaRema is brought in the Magen Avraham, not brought, it's passing in the Magen Avraham, the Magen Avram says, the Magen Avram is talking about a Choleh sheyesh b'sakana taking it. We're there, of course, he can't take it. And the Magen Avram says, Ayin Shas Teshuvos HaRema Siman Kuf Chav Daled. So the Chayadim says, he says, there's no way that the Rama wrote this tshuva. This that the Magen Avram brings it, you'll see. I don't know if I want to say afterwards. He says, but in very strong language, he says, no, it's a mistake. He only said it because he wanted to make the Choleh sheyesh b'sakana feel better. That he shouldn't feel bad that he's eating stam yenim. He's going to bother him. So the Chayadim says, he was lachazik hadin the Choleh lo yikatzbar. He wanted to encourage the Choleh to eat it because the Choleh is allowed to be over on Issurim. So in order to encourage him to eat it, so that he brought this Chayadim. He brought this Ramah. He says, but the Magen Avram was in Archaim and he wasn't learning Yerdei that day, and he therefore, if he would have been Ayin, he would have realized that this tshuva was a fake. He says the tshuva.
What does Mem Samach
Mem Samach, what do you say?
It's
not the type. The Magen Avram is talking about the Choleh sheyesh b'sakana, and he says, look at the Ramah. It says the Choleh she'ein b'sakana. He doesn't say what it says. His point is, so the Chayadim is saying the Magen Avram just wanted to make the Choleh not feel so bad. So he's saying you can eat it, but really the Ramah is talking about Choleh she'ein b'sakana. Okay, so he says this tshuva was written. The Chayadim says it was written by people from Italy who wanted to support their way of doing things that they ate stam yenim, and they slipped it into the printer. They got the printer to stick it in some innocent place. They said, "I'll just throw it in over there." They threw in this tshuva. He says, but they didn't really write it. It's not true. The Ramah never wrote this tshuva. He says, and v'haraya, he says, if you look at the three prints over here, all the old prints of the Teshuvos HaRema have it, but when in the year Tov Ayin Aleph, the Chacham Tzvi printed a copy of the Teshuvos HaRema with his Haskam on the front of it, and they took the tshuva out. Okay, because they didn't. It was what?
Who's Haskam?
The Chacham Tzvi had Haskam to that printing of the Teshuvos HaRema, and they took it out. Okay, they took it out because it's a forgery because he never wrote it. Okay, the Pri Megadim was a little softer on it. He says, okay, maybe the Ramah wrote it. He says, I don't know if the Ramah wrote it. He doesn't talk whether it's a forgery or not. He says, but the Ramah writes in Tshuva one thing, and in Shulchan Aruch he writes that a Choleh she'ein b'sakana can't eat it. So we go with what it says in Shulchan Aruch that he's not eating. Okay, so by and large, everybody ignores what it says in the Tshuva, except for the first part of it, that should the person be considered a chassid. Rabbi Shachtel, as he mentioned, likes to talk about that part of when do we trust the chassid. When is a person considered a chassid that we should or shouldn't believe him? Okay.
The Mishnah says that it's forgery?
Yeah.
So why do we take it? No, it's forgery.
What about this specific Tshuva? So, no, but the conceptual, the other parts of it,
it's forgery.
Okay, that's a good question.
It's a forgery. He didn't put
I didn't put that part in, but he does. The Chacham says it's a forgery. He says he never wrote it. It was not written by him. He says some Italians who wanted to support their way of doing things wrote this whole Tshuva and stuck it in there.
They were just to add on those words at the bottom.
That last part of it, okay, I don't think he says that. I think that part doesn't do the Italians. It wouldn't support the Italians to say that the Choleh she'ein b'sakana can eat it.
Is there any evidence that it's been
His evidence that it was for, well, the Ramah in the Sefer, no, the Ramah in the Sefer says not like that. In the Ramah says not like that. Okay.
There's another edition in Shas Teshuvos HaRema from Usher Zia. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I didn't.
He used to be from the YU.
Okay.
80 years ago.
Okay.
So I think he writes about it.
Yeah. So on the bottom it says in some prints this is here, and some prints it's not there. And I'll tell you, you look at it yourself, you see what you want to, okay? Anyhow, so we will continue on with the assumption that a Choleh she'ein b'sakana is not allowed to eat stam yenim. Okay? But, like this. There's a sefer, and I don't think I ever heard of it before, and it's called Teshuvos HaRema. Okay, the Ranach was a Rav in Turkey in the 1500s. Okay, but the Darkei Tshuva brings the following. On that din Kuf Nun Hey, the Darkei Tshuva brings this sefer Teshuvos HaRema. Okay, no, I don't. He was a Rav in Constantinople. Okay, that's all I know. And he says here's a great idea. He says, remember, the Choleh she'ein b'sakana is allowed to do Isurim D'Rabbanan as long as they're not connected to Achila. So he says if you have a Choleh she'ein b'sakana who needs to eat stam yenim, he's not allowed to, because it's a D'Rabbanan of eating, he's not allowed to do it. He says, so what we should do is, take the stam yenim, be diluted into water or apple juice. That's an Issa D'Rabbanan to do Bitul of Achila. But that Issa D'Rabbanan is not an Issa D'Rabbanan of Achila, just a plain old Issa D'Rabbanan. So the Choleh she'ein b'sakana could do that. Let him do that. Now it's bottled. Now that it's bottled, he's allowed to eat it, because now you're allowed to eat it. And once something that's bottled, you're allowed to eat it. He did Bitul D'Schatchila, fine, that Issur D'Rabbanan he can do. Now this is an Issur D'Rabbanan that has nothing to do with Achila. So if it's Issur D'Rabbanan nothing to do with Achila, then you could do that. The Choleh could do it. He says, Bitul D'Schatchila? Bitul, but the being Mevatel has nothing to do with anything. He says, and then once you, after you did that, once you did the deed, now you can drink it. Now it's okay. Now you can have the apple juice with the Samyan mixed into it. Okay, sit down.
Why is Issur Achila, why is it an exception?
Why is it an exception? I don't remember why. Okay,
If it's because it enters a person's system, so even if it's diluted,
is that true?
Still,
I don't know if it's possible. It's mutter. You're allowed to eat it. You're allowed to eat it.
So we have to understand what the makkah.
Okay, that's a fair question. Okay, now the Pri Megadim in Hilchos Shabbos, who talks about Choleh, the Pri Megadim there brings something from a Parshas Drachim, from the Mishnah Melech. And at first glance, what the Mishnah Melech says seems to be not like what I just told you from this Teshuvos HaRema. Okay, and he's talking about to me it was an interesting question. Like this. The Gemara says like this. The Gemara says in Yuma that a person who's a Choleh sheyesh ber sakana is allowed to be over on ul isurim. It also says that the Choleh sheyesh ber sakana should minimize the amount of isurim he does. Okay, don't do every isur. Try to do as little isur as possible. That's one thing the Gemara says. The same Gemara says is talking about a shayla when they have to make minimal isurim. Which one should I choose? Which is the smaller isur than the other? And the Gemara says that if a Choleh sheyesh ber sakana needs to eat tevel, he's allowed to eat tevel. Okay, it's an issur d'oraisa to eat tevel. He's allowed to be over on that issur d'oraisa. So, the Mishnah Melech, he says, why would the Choleh sheyesh ber sakana eat tevel? He says, why wouldn't he be mafresh the truma and then mix it right back in? He says, because the case in the Gemara is a person with bulmus. He has to eat everything. Okay, he can't just be mafresh the truma and not eat it. He needs the whole potato. So be mafresh the truma, mix it right back in. Mixing it back in, l'fi the cheshbon comes out in mid-d'oraisa, it'll be bottle. It'll only mid-d'rabbanan, it will not be bottle. Okay, so what? You just turned your issur d'oraisa into an issur d'rabbanan. So go ahead, be mafresh the truma, put them right back into the food, and then eat the whole food. So why would the same Gemara just said you should minimize the isurim as much as you can. There's an automatic way to minimize the issur tevel. To be mafresh the truma, mix it back in, and you're a business. Okay, that's the Mishnah Melech's question. Okay, so the Mishnah Melech answers that question. Parshas Drachim answers that question. He says like this. He says a rule. He says a Choleh is only allowed to do isurim that will help him towards his getting better. Okay, have something to do, have some shaykhs to his health, to his care, even if not to make him better, but for his care, something to do with his care. He says this issur you're doing Bitul D'Schatchila has nothing to do with your care. It will not make you one drop better to be mafresh truma and then mix it back in. It's just minimizing isurim. He says, but it has nothing to do with your care. So you can do any issur you want to make yourself better, or that has nothing to do with your care, but just to do an issur, just because you want to help yourself on the side way, you're not allowed to do that.
Why does he have to eat the whole thing?
Because the Gemara says it has, the Gemara says the person who has bulmus has to keep on eating, so the assumption, I'm sticking in that explanation to what the person I'm saying is, why they just be mafresh and throw in the garbage and put it on the side is because you have to eat everything.
So then if he has to eat everything, so then it is directly helping him.
No, but but who asked him to mix it in? If you...
Yes. Oh, you think, why does he have to eat it together? Is that?
He just eat the tevel. Eat the tevel, the whole potato right is. Why being mafresh and then mixing it back in?
Once he's mafresh, being mafresh is not an issur at all, right? Being mafresh is
no, nothing wrong with that.
So now he has truma.
Right.
But so far he hasn't done any isurim. So now, but he wants to eat the truma. He can't eat the truma. So now, in order for him to be able to
eat that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. Okay, so that's a fair question on the Parshas Drachim. That's what he said. He says the Choleh has no right to be over on an issur, any issur, even though it's issur d'rabbanan only, even that's going to help it. Now he says the Choleh himself might choose to do this. Okay? The Choleh himself might save his soul by doing this. Okay? But somebody else shouldn't be doing this for him. Okay? We have no rights to do that. If the guy wants to save himself, but that's his...
Why does he heal it? What? It's anyway sure you can get less issur. I don't understand all that. It's like less issur. Most of the school is a little bit too much. I don't.
Again, most of it is...
less issur. Instead of eating all tevel, you'll have much less issur. You have cool and too.
So that's a clear in the Gemara there, whether it's better to eat truma or to eat tevel. But if the guy had just this choice. You're saying you let him eat 90% will be tevel and 1% will be truma. Why do you think that's better?
Chulin and truma instead of 100 kazayas in the tevel.
Okay, good. So that has to do with the Gemara there about which is better, whether you're better off eating that. And that has to do with his shayla. You're asking a separate question. So let's be mafresh and then eat it like that. You're asking a separate question. But his question is, mafresh and stick it back in. Okay.
What's the difference between him and what do you mean he wants to save himself that he could do? What's the difference between him and somebody else? It's not doicha because this doesn't help. This is not helping my.
So why should he do it himself?
Yeah. What's the difference?
Okay, I'm not sure of that either. Okay, so now when I first saw this, I thought it was not like what this Teshuvos HaRema is saying. Because remember, the Ranach said is let's be over on the Isser Bitul Chatchila in order so that the Choleh should be able to have it. Remember what I told you with the person he has stam that he wants to eat, let him be over on Bitul Chatchila as a way of making it able he should be able to eat it. And here the Rosh Hashanah saying you're not allowed to do Bitul Chatchila to help the Choleh.
Okay? Sorry, doesn't it also say supposed to shecht? We read it to shecht and not eat nevela?
Well, you have to shecht because you have to make the animal. You want to eat the animal.
Shecht and Shabbos instead of eating nevela.
You want to eat this.
But shechting doesn't help me. Shechting's not helping me get better.
I can't eat it when it's alive. We're going to get a bite out of the cow, so I have to kill it before I eat it anyhow. That's what I need. I need to get a piece of meat. I got to kill a cow and eat it. Now I can go to the store and take a piece of it.
You get a free card.
What does it say? How long you say it for? You said it to shecht and to.
I have no idea. In those kind of cases, the guy is helping himself. He's killing an animal so he can take a piece of meat and he can eat it. That's all towards helping himself eat it. Over here, the dilution has nothing to do with helping himself. What he needs for his health is to eat a potato. So, Hafash Truma doesn't make him able to eat it, but a piece of meat.
No, I hear.
You guys think that you can just take a bite out of the cow. Most people don't. Okay, but the truth is, the Mishnah Melech is not saying different than the Ranach because there's a simple reason why not. And that's because, in the case that the Mishnah Melech is talking about, the Choleh doesn't need the Hafrashas Trumas Meisers because he's a Choleh sheyesh b'sakana. He's going to get better no matter what. He can eat the potato or he'll do the Hafrashas and mix it back in. Either way, he's going to be able to help himself out. The shayla is, should he do it this way or should he do it that way? In our case, in the case that this Teshuvos HaRema is speaking about, if we tell the Choleh that he should not dilute the stam yenam, he's not going to get better. Because we're going to tell him you're not allowed to eat Issa D'Rabbanan. So right now, if he comes to him and says, well, can I eat this stam yenam? The Rav says, no, you can't eat it. So you can't get better. He will not get healthy because he can't eat it because he's not allowed to do Issa D'Rabbanan, that I have to do the achila. The only way for me to get better is to dilute it first. So don't look at it that I'm doing it to avoid Issa. I'm doing it to get better. In the case of the Mishnah Melech, I don't need it to get better because I could just eat the tevel. And I can get better also. I eat an Isser, I'm allowed to do the Isser. But in this case with the stam yenam, he's a Choleh she'ein bo sakana. The Choleh she'ein bo sakana is not allowed to eat stam yenam. So if he's not allowed to eat the stam yenam, the only way to get better is to help me get around the Isra Achila by diluting and then eating it. Okay, so in that case, you're allowed to do it because the Mishnah Melech would agree that in this case, the Choleh needs it to get better. He can't get better unless he first dilutes it and then eats it, because if he doesn't dilute it, the rabbi would tell him he's not allowed to eat it. It's D'Rabbanan and he's a Choleh she'ein bo sakana.
But maybe he's just not allowed to eat it.
No, so you say he's not allowed to eat it, so now I'm a Choleh she'ein bo sakana. To get better, I need that wine. So now, I have a way to do it. I can do it Issa D'Rabbanan, that's not avachil, and get my...
The rules don't work. They don't work.
No, the Mishnah Melech just said is, you can't do things to help yourself, you can only do things to make yourself healthy. So over here, I need this to make myself better. This is to get better. I have to do that Issa D'Rabbanan. Now, it's for a roundabout reason. Doing Bitul doesn't really make me better, but it gives me the tool to make myself better. So it's like shechting. I have to shecht it to get the piece of meat to get better. Now, you should know also that the Mishnah Melech himself says, he says, I made you this rule, that the Choleh can't do things to minimize the Yisr. He says, but if you turn the page in the Gemara, okay, this is on Ayin Dalet, maybe it is. I'm sorry, Pei Gimel Amud Aleph. If you turn to Pei Gimel Amud Beis, you'll see the Gemara gives another case where the Choleh is allowed to do something even though it's only to minimize the Yisr. It's nothing to do to making him better. Okay, it's the same guy being mafresh Trumos has tevel who's being mafresh, and he's allowed to do it on Shabbos. He's allowed to be mafresh on Shabbos to make it only Issa D'Rabbanan instead of an Issa D'Oraisa. You're not allowed to do Hafrashas Truma on Shabbos midrabanan, but you say you avoid the issur of tevel. So the Gemara says you should do that. Okay, so he says if you turn the page, you're going to find out that the Gemara says not like what I just said. But he likes his rule anyhow, even though he says the Gemara says that Amr Bey is not like him. Okay, he says the Gemara says turn the page, you'll see it says not like me. Okay, and there's another thing. He says I just thought it was an interesting shout. I was looking to see what other people said. I found 5 other answers. Okay, to the Mishnah Melch's question. Okay, the first one was you only have to do things that are for the that'll help the Choleh directly. Okay, that was the Mishnah Melch's answer. Okay, Abnei Malum says it's an issa deraisa to dilute the truma back into it. There's a mitzvah of the hinei nesatechem b'shmeres trumoisai. You mechuyev to watch out for the kedusha of truma, and if you go ahead and dilute it right back in, that's your plan. You're going to dilute it right back in. You're being over on that issa deraisa. Okay, not everybody agrees to that, but he says that would be an issa deraisa. So you're not gaining anything by doing this. Okay, another answer. This is from the Yavit says, he says there are many Issurim D'Rabbanan over here. Okay, he counts up a bunch of Issurim D'Rabbanan. You have to do Hafasha. One of the tribes says it's Shabbos, Bitul Chatchila, eating food that was not bottled with the rice is only bottled with the Rabbanan. It's only bottled with the rice, not with the Rabbanan. So he says to do a lot of D'Rabbanan. That's why you're not allowed to do it, because you have to be over a lot of D'Rabbanan. So a lot of D'Rabbanan to one the rice, so that's not worth it. He says, who do we have next? Chazam Sefer says, he says, if you take Truma and you mafresh Truma with the plan to put it right back in, you've undone your Hafrasha. Okay, the Hafrasha gets undone, and it's as if you were never mafresh Truma in the first place. It goes back to being Tevel. Okay. So the Chazam Sefer says, he says, and there's a Yerushalmi that says like that. There's a Yerushalmi that says like that. And the Chazon says, he says, there's no logic. It's not possible that this can make any sense. He says, you mix it back in, and now it goes into Hilchos Taruvos. He says, you don't undo the Truma. And the Chazon says, okay, we have different gears in there, Yerushalmi, and that Yerushalmi didn't say that. Okay? So, that Chazon says, the Hafrashas make it's as if you never do the Hafrasha. Okay, next. Chazon says, it's talking about a situation. He says, guys, let's say it was a potato. Okay, when you make your mafresh, you take away the potato, and now you have a piece that's truma, and now you got to mix it back in. Okay, how are you going to mix the potato back in that you can't tell which is the piece? So you have to do something to make it back in, to make it that it's mixed in that you can't tell the difference. He says, so the Gemara is talking about when is it a case that you can eat tevel? In a case where you can't mix it back in. Okay, the chayil is, he's dying. He's a chayil sheish b'sakana. He's not up to making mashed potatoes. Okay, he says, or he doesn't say this case, but the Gemara number days talks about cases on Shabbos. So on Shabbos you can't mix it back in because you'll be over on what's it called? You're not going to be mixing up anyhow on Shabbos. Okay, so the chayil said, no, this is a situation that it wasn't possible. But were it to be possible, I would agree. He doesn't use his words the Ranah. I would agree that that's what you should do. Okay. And Leah's Ramosha says, I don't know what the Kashrus is at all. He says, you can't be mafresh Truma. Because the only person who can be mafresh Truma is the owner. So the bunch of people sitting there with a piece of tevel, and none of them is the owner, so they can't be mafresh Trumas. Okay, now the Chasam Sofer says that they can. Ramosha brings it. The Chasam Sofer says that even if you're not the owner, you can, because the rights that you have to steal it gives you the right. The right, because of the sakana, that you steal the guy's food, also gives you the right to be mafresh Truma. Much as he doesn't agree with that, he doesn't buy that. It's also a question from that Gemara. Also, the Gemara says again, when you turn the page, the Gemara says you should be mafresh Truma on Shabbos. But the Gemara says it's talking about. He said I don't see the Shaila rule. So he's crying. That's what Ramosha and Chasam Sofer talking about. Chasam Sofer says, well, you stole it. Now that you stole it, now you got the rights to steal it. Her told you allowed to steal it, so therefore it's yours, and therefore you can Ramosha says that's not true. Yeah.
So you wouldn't be allowed, the person is allowed to steal it because he thought that's just kind of, he wouldn't be able to do mafresh.
No, you can't, because it's been claimed. You're not allowed to do someone else's, mafresh someone else's truma. I can't.
Once you stole it to eat it, then it's yours. It's,
okay, so that's what I'm sorry, I'm just telling you such a shot. I don't remember the details about it, okay? Anyway, so lots of other answers to this question. Yes.
303,
You want to know really? It had to do with the way the page fit out on the screen. It had nothing. There isn't any deep meaning behind why they're like that. Okay.
Years from now, somebody's going to give a PowerPoint on why.
Okay. So that's you should know. So this that the Parshas Drachim said such a thing. Not everybody agrees to, and last is you should know also. in Siman Tzadi Tes, which is the dinim of Bitul Chatila, there the Badi Shulchan brings a raya from Minchas Yaakov. We spoke about this at the end of Teshuvos HaRema. A raya from Minchas Yaakov that actually connected to the din Kufnan Hey, that a Choleh she'ein b'sakana is allowed to be over on the Isser of Bitul Chatila in order to get himself the medicine that he needs. Okay, in other words, if that will make it able to get the medicine, then that is what he should do. It has to do with that Ramah that we said at the end of Kufnan Hey that I was telling you about. It has to do with in Hilchos Teloim. It says you're not allowed to eat burnt bugs, and over there in Kufnan Hey it says you are allowed to eat it. And we talked about at the end of Teloim about a stira seemingly between those two dinim, and the Minchas Yaakov says that the answer is the Choleh is allowed to do it. Okay, so another raya that a Choleh is allowed to do this thing. Okay, so now we're not finished. We have two applications to what we've been talking about. Okay, so let me recap before I move on. A Choleh she'ein b'sakana is not allowed to do Issurim D'Rabbanan that have to do with Achila. But this Teshuvos HaRema and seemingly other reasons to think like that as well say is, but he can't do Issurim Achila, but let him be Mavatal the Stam Yenim. And then once he's Mavatal the Stam Yenim, now he would be allowed to eat the mixture, and that it's only Issurim D'Rabbanan that's not Achila, and he should be allowed to do that. So now, there's a medicine. There's a thing called a remedy, which is known as Bach Remedies. Okay, you may have heard it. Okay, maybe the Jews would call it Bach Remedies, but I think everybody else calls it Bach Remedies. Okay, and that is there was about 100 years ago there was an Englishman named Dr. Edward Bach, and he said that if you take this mix of 38 extracts of 38 herbs, then it helps for different kinds of mental illnesses. It helps overcome nervousness and anxiety. So, Derech Klal, this medicine is sold as Dr. Bach had wanted it to be in a mixture of 27% brandy. Okay? He said that the brandy is not supposed to be medicinal. The brandy is supposed to be a preservative to keep it, that it works before you have it. Okay? So, not everybody sells like that. It's not everybody who makes like that, but Derech Klal, everybody makes it in this 27%. Not everybody, but Derech Klal. Now, most people look at this and say it's 27% brandy. Brandy is Stam Yenim, so of course you can't have this stuff. Okay. In fact, in town last night there was someone who knows quite a lot about Kashrus and medicines, and I told him I'm going to speak about this today. I told him I'm going to speak about it today, and he says, "Well, of course you're not allowed to have it." Okay. So I then started to tell him, which is the following: okay, the many people who know, like that person, know that Diane Falk from England, Gateshead, I think, from England, tells people that they're allowed to use it. Okay? And everybody scratches their head. Why should you be allowed to do it? Including this person from last night. He says, yeah, I heard you say, but I can't imagine why you'd be allowed to do that. Okay? Can't imagine why you should be allowed to do that. Okay? So recently, Diane Falk printed a second volume of his tshuvas. And in there it includes a tshuva, a very long, really well written and thorough, and really covers a lot of points, tshuva, written from 2001. The tshuva it was just printed recently, but it was from 2001. I never saw the tshuva until recently. Until I saw this tshuva, also scratched my head and said, I can't imagine why he'd say it's okay. Okay, and he says you can use it. Okay, now, but he doesn't say you can use it no matter what. He says you can use it in the following way, which is what you're supposed to do anyhow. You're really supposed to do anyhow what he said, and that is the following. The way Dr. Bach wanted people to use it was take 2 drops of this remedy and put it into an ounce of water, and then swallow the water. So it comes out, if there's 2 drops and it's 27% brandy, that means there's a half a drop of wine in your brandy in your treatment. So Rafalk says you have to be mabatal the brandy b'shishim. If you remember, we spoke about it sometime. Because there's 2 drops, so a quarter of 2 drops is a half a drop.
27%.
It's about a quarter. It's about a quarter. It's about 25%. It's about a quarter. So it's about a half of a drop. Okay. So he says it's like this. He says you need to be vata b'shishim. We spoke about it. We thought it should probably be about 40 times. But a bit of b'shisha on brandy is concentrated. He says b'shishim. We said it's about 40 times. But even b'shishim, half a drop in an ounce is well bottled. The official rules are that an ounce has 600 drops in it. Okay, I don't know who counted, but that's what the world thinks. But whatever it is, half a drop of brandy in an ounce of water is going to be bottled, even in his way, according to Bashishim. So he says this, so it's going to be bottled Bashishim. He says, so, it
This treats anxiety.
anxiety, nervousness, and different...
And that's Sakana?
No, so I didn't say anything about sakana yet. I didn't say anything. He said, if the person is a choleh she'ein b'sakana, if the person is a choleh she'ein b'sakana, which some of those people are, the person have a mental illness to the point they're a choleh she'ein b'sakana, if they're a choleh she'ein b'sakana, then if...
Just take the brand.
If the person is choleh she'ein b'sakana, so he says, so here the fact that Tshuva brings such an idea that a choleh she'ein b'sakana could be mevatel, could be over, it's a bitul l'chatchila. He could do bitul l'chatchila to dilute it in water, and therefore he's allowed to take it. So you want to know why he's allowed to take it. If you're allowed to take it, if you do it the way you're supposed to. Now there are some people who take this stuff and drip it right onto their tongues. Okay, they put the medicine they drip the drops right into their tongues. So Diane Falk says, a dozen times. He says, I never said you're allowed to do that. Even though there are people who quote him as saying that he can. But Diane Falk says, I did not say you should do that. I only said you should do it the way the instructions are, which is put it into water, which is what you're supposed to do. On the bottle it says, put this 2 drops into an ounce of water and then drink it like that. He says, and then...
It's hard to say that it's not even cool, that's the way you're supposed to.
So the second answer is, the second shot is, the second thing that Diane Fox says is that even if a person is a choleh she just has a mechush, or he's just taking it to expound health and well-being, people take it every day, someone wants to take it, he says, so over here it's en kavanas levatel. He says, because I'm not putting the stuff into water because you're trying to be bottled. A certain fact, according to Dr. Bach, I don't even need the brandy. Okay, according to him, all I need is the other thing. The brandy is just a preservative. And I'm not putting it into the water to try to get Isser into my body. I'm putting the thing into the water because that's what the rules are. That's how you're supposed to take this medicine. You're supposed to put it into water. So it's in kavanas levatel. The person's not trying to be bottled Isser. He has no interest in having the Isser. He's not trying to get the Isser. He's just diluting it because that's what you're supposed to do. So since it's in kavanas levatel, even a person with choleh she'ein, even a person with just a mechush, who's not even a choleh she'ein b'sakana, would be allowed to do that. That's what Diane Falk says. Both of those cheshbonos I think are
You are trying to go about that.
No, you're trying to take the medicine. The person is following instructions. I'm not trying to be bottled. I'm trying to take medicine. The way you take the medicine is, you drop these things into water and take it. And not only that,
You're not doing that, really.
and not only that, it's that according to the rules, the brandy has nothing to do with it's not medicinal. I have no interest in it.
I don't hear it.
You're just temporary, right? So it's ain't got I have no interest in it. That's what you say. It's just here and here, right? That's ain't got Okay. So I give you the truth if you want. He has a lot to say about it. Don't. I told you in 30 seconds. He has lots to. The truth is about 15 pages long, 25 pages long.
What's more to be said about it?
Now,
He said
oh,
very
big. So, because I only told you these 2 points. He has lots of other things to say. Some of them were really very unusual or unexpected, and that I did not repeat. And some of them were other. He took some just other parts of the Shiloh that were worth talking about. Some of the things he says were
Everything else in there is kosher. Everything else in there.
The rest of the other things that are in there are not kashrus. Right? No, the guy who made this thing is long dead. Okay, so now. That's one, not going into this. So I thought that these 2 parts of it, I went through I don't know how many pages it is to pull out these 2 parts of it that you want to hear. Okay, so, but the truth is, I thought very well, very thorough, very thought out. Whenever he says something, you say, well, what about this thing? What is he going to say? And then he turn the page, and there he says.
He's not taking about this until that's what comes in.
Right? He said for 2 reasons. He has 2 of the reasons I'm telling you are, one is because it's en kavanas levatel, and second is, even if it's an isser bitul l'chatchila, if it's a choleh she'ein b'sakana, he'd be allowed to do it. Now, the other nafkamina is,
Someone who's anxious is categorized.
sometimes, I didn't say always, it depends on the situation. Some people are like that. Some people who have mental illnesses are yesh b'sakana even. Okay, it depends on how sick the person is. Okay? For that side, the first reason I told you, he said that would only be for choleh she'ein b'sakana if the person is. But his other reason I told you is for anybody. Okay, so 100%. Yeah, he's yeah. Okay, so now we spoke about a few weeks ago liquid medicines. Okay, liquid medicines that have what happened? Oh my gosh, liquid medicines that have some Safek Isser in them, Safek Isser D'Oraisa in them, because they have glycerin in them. Okay, so we spoke about then a few times ago people who had suggested that you could dilute the medicine, the same idea we're talking about here, take the liquid medicine, dilute it in apple juice, and the cheshbon was one teaspoon for every 2 ounces, if I remember the cheshbon was, to be vatal b'shishim. It's bitul l'chachila. You're being vatal l'chachila. They said, that's okay. It's only suffix isser. We don't know that the glycerin is straight. It's only suffix isser. Okay? So we spoke about then was, is that true? And there were those who, there were reasons to think that that's correct. That's in bitul l'chachila is only the rabbanon. Therefore, your suffix bitul l'chachila is not asr. There is reason to think like that. But the question was, first of all, whether that's true, and second is, whether this should be looked at as a derabanan or as a deraisa. We spoke about many sheets in Nachronim that maybe this should be viewed as a deraisa, since the core question is whether the glycerin is asma deraisa. Which we spoke about that. And that's, yesh loaded on that shaila itself. What we've now found is that if the person who's taking the medicine is a choleh she'ein b'sakana, which it tends to be, because the liquid medicines tend to be for children, and as I mentioned before, and I didn't intend to, but as I mentioned before, a child who's sick is almost always automatically a choleh she'ein b'sakana. But so if the person who's taking the medicine is a choleh she'ein b'sakana, so then we've now heard for the past however long I'm talking that a choleh she'ein b'sakana could do the isur d'rabbanan of bitul l'chachila. So the last time we spoke about was maybe it should be mutter. It's not bitul l'chachila because it's only a suffix isser. And I say, let it be bitul l'chachila. It's a straight out isser d'rabbanan of bitul l'chachila. Okay, the chayla is allowed to do the isser d'rabbanan of bitul l'chachila. It's not isser achila. It's an isser stama, an isser. Don't think about this l'chachila. Okay, so the chayla she'ein b'sakana is allowed to do that isser, ignoring the possibility that's of the suffix shabbat. Let it be with vada isser. As long as the person is a choleh she'ein b'sakana, then he'd be allowed to do that because he's allowed to do this draban of bitul l'chachila. Well, when we say that a person is a choleh and you're allowed to do things for a choleh, there's no difference in the choleh himself and people who are helping the choleh. Those are the same thing. When a choleh, let's say sheyesh b'sakana, we don't say you drive yourself to the hospital. I can drive to the hospital also. It doesn't make a difference who does the isser. That had to do with over there when he said you're not allowed to do the isser. The guy could want to save his neshama. He had such a thing: save your neshama and do yourself a favor. But over here, where the din says someone's allowed to bear with the answer, whether the kid does it or the I doesn't. And yeah, so I thought that was a fair answer. It's not what I've always heard. Why those people thought, what we heard was also the suffix, but this.
I want to say. You say you're limiting it to it has to be a chayla.
I'm saying the choleh she'ein b'sakana, right? They would be saying it would be much for everybody, right? If I want to take cough medicine, and I just have a runny nose, I want to take cough medicine, and it comes in a liquid. So I'm not. If I'm not a choleh she'ein b'sakana, right? Then this would not help me, and only that's how it would help. For children's
medications, everything else, something.
Well, particularly it's for over-the-counter medicine.
Right.
Those right. So for those kind of medicines, to say that if it's a choleh she'ein b'sakana, again, the kid who's sick is almost always an automatic. Then you'd be left to do the bitul isser. This is
we should revise our OTC list.
No, we tell people this now that they could dilute their medicine and take it.
Why should we put on the list?
So we could talk about how on the list. A list just says mutter asher. Say on the side of there.
That might be it's so helpful.